So, John, I want to welcome you to the Martin County Police Athletic League. I am super ecstatic and excited about what we're getting into here. We've got a whole parenting series that we're going to launch for the public to hear on better ways just to cope with your kids and just how to be a better parent.
Well, I am honored that you've invited me to be a part of this, Noel. The program, it's a great program that you're running here. Obviously, a great fit between yourself and the program itself. And so thanks for inviting me to be a part of this.
Awesome. Well, let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. I've got a stack of questions. I got questions from parents. I have my own personal questions. My wife had questions. I mean, when people heard that you were coming here, the questions were pouring in.
Cool.
So my first question is, what's your approach to disciplining your child who misbehaves?
Well, that's an interesting question. Most people in America today conceive of discipline as the process by which you accomplish certain behavioral goals by manipulating consequences. And I tell
fall into that category myself.
Well, I tell my audiences all over the country, because I'm a guy who promotes a very traditional approach to child rearing. And I tell people that, yeah, there are times when consequences are in fact necessary, but consequences are not the crux of the disciplinary process. Really, the crux of the disciplinary process is that you project a certain attitude toward your child. And if pressed to define the attitude, I would say, in one word, leadership. That you are there as a child leader, and that there is nothing this child can do that is going to knock you off balance.
Oh, and they're pretty good at that.
Oh, and they're going to try to knock you off balance.
Every time.
And discipline, in other words, is first and foremost a matter of self-discipline. So that whatever the child does, you deal with it in a cool, calm, collected fashion. And so what I try to teach parents, Noel, is that discipline is really an attitude. It's an attitude of self-assurance. It's an attitude of being completely confident in the legitimacy of your authority over the child. It's an attitude that you reflect in how you talk to the child. It's an attitude that you reflect in your tone of voice, your facial expression, your body language. And boil it down, it's the nonverbal message is, I got this, kid. I got it.
That's a lot. I mean, it's a lot to absorb, and I see where you're coming from with that. The pushback I see with that is, the kids are constantly pushing your buttons. Like, you tell them something's wrong and then you scream and holler, or you get, oh, you're a terrible parent and I don't want to be here anymore. And, and that's when your emotions start kicking in. So how do we fine tune that?
Yeah, another great question. What I do when I'm counseling with parents is I actually script responses to those sorts of things. So a parent tells me, well, anytime I correct my child explodes. My child tells me he hates me, can't stand me, can't wait to leave. And so I write a script for that, for the parent to follow. Because what I find, Noel, is that parents, they don't know what to do.
Or to say.
Yeah, they're caught unawares. And so, for example, taking that as an example, and the best scripts are short. The best scripts are few words. So here's my script for that. The child screams he hates you, and you look at the child and go, well, if I was your age in this situation right now, I would hate me too, no problem. And it takes the wind out of the child's sails.
You took the wind out of mine just now.
Right. I mean, he suddenly.
Yeah. Wait, you're not supposed to say that.
He's been taken unawares.
Right.
And from that point, he's going to begin listening to you because you have presented yourself to him as a cool, calm, collected authority figure.
So the discipline part is the other piece of this whole thing, just like everything else. Like, I want to lose some weight, but all that comes with discipline, or I'm going to work out every single day. That comes with discipline. So a lot of what you're talking about is, you have to train yourself to be disciplined to follow these steps and do the exact same things the same way, say the same things every single time.
And it is a self-training process. And the training that I do with parents is facilitated by, like I told you before, the scripts that I develop for parents. And after developing, 10, 20 scripts for a parent, they begin to get it. They begin to see, oh, okay. And they not only get it in terms of the process and the procedure, but they begin to get it in terms of the attitude, and they begin to understand that, okay, the discipline of my child is not all about consequences. Although consequences may at times be necessary, important, consequences are what I call Plan B. Plan B is your presentation to the child.
So you talked about plan A and plan B, plan A being the delivery and following a script, plan B being a consequence. When do we determine when we have to implement plan B?
Well, early on in this process of rehabilitating yourself as an authority figure, which is what I help parents do, if plan A isn't working, then we go to plan B. And plan B is setting up some consequence-based procedure that causes the child to realize that there's not going to be a payoff for him in continuing to behave in whatever fashion he's behaving. So, but eventually the goal is to present yourself to the child in as competent a way as you can, and thus convince the child, okay, there's no point in my attempting to rebel, defy belligerently this individual because I'm not able to do it. It's just not bringing any payoff to me.
And how does that look across the scale of ages? So my elementary age child versus my middle school age child versus my high school child.
Well, let's go back even further than that. Really, the most important disciplinary precedents are set during the preschool years. And when, during the preschool years, children begin to test your authority at a very intense level is during what is traditionally called the terrible twos, which generally begin around 18 months. And 18 months is the time when you need to develop a good disciplinary attitude when it comes to dealing with your child. Your child at the age of 2 is, and I tell people, what is a 2-year-old? All 2-year-olds have ADHD. All 2-year-olds have oppositional defiant disorder, and all 2-year-olds are bipolar. And that's your challenge at the age of 2. Your challenge at the age of 2 is to begin presenting yourself to this child in a way that convinces this child at this very early age that you are running the show. And the earlier that you can establish that sort of precedent, the better for all concerned.
So what if I didn't do that at 18 months?
Well,
At high school, I have a child that's completely out of control, is in trouble with the law, and I've lost all control. What am I going to do?
okay, realistically, Noel, there is a point at which you cross a line with a child. Once you cross that line, it's going to be very, very difficult to rehabilitate your disciplinary presentation, and very, very difficult to pull the child back across that line. But when is that line crossed? With some children, it's crossed at 12. With some at 14. With some at 16. That's why it's so important to set these precedents early. But if you don't set them early, and you encounter major discipline problems down the road, it is possible to rehabilitate yourself and, in so doing, rehabilitate your child behaviorally. But it's a whole lot easier to do back when the child is in
of course.
between his second and third birthday. That's the critical year right there.
Right.
That's the precedent-setting year. If you do a proper job during that year, then you come out the other side. When the child is 3 years old, you come out the other side with everybody, figuratively speaking, smelling like a rose. There'll still be problems
Mm. Always
because,
will be,
you
right.
know, children will be children, but they probably will not be major. They'll be incidental from that point on.
So a lot of some of the kids that we see have crossed the line, like that relationship has crossed the line. So they enter into some of our programs because parents are looking for help. And I feel like, having that resource nowadays for parents where they can get these kids involved in other programs that are discipline based with positive mentorship, that's just another tool to help, bring everybody back across the line.
Yeah, and quite often it's very helpful, especially with teenagers, to bring in other competent authority figures into their lives. By that time, in many cases, the parents have exhausted their resources
Yes.
and they're really not emotionally capable of rehabilitating themselves. And so the program that you offer, PAL, here in Stewart Palm City, does a wonderful job of being a proxy for the parents,
I
basically
like that term.
providing the authority to the child that the parents failed to provide prior to the child coming into your program.
Fantastic.